Come here for a second. No, really. Come closer. Because I don't want you half listening while you scrolling. I don't want this to be background noise. This right here, this is one of those messages you feel. Take a breath. Slow down. Let your shoulders relax. Because what I'm about to say, it's not random. It didn't just pop up. God timed this for you. Sister, you did something recently, and I need you to think about it for a second, because you almost overlooked it. You told yourself it wasn't that serious. It was just a small decision. I was just trying to do better. But baby, it was bigger than you think. That moment when you held your tongue, that moment when you didn't respond how you used to, that moment when you walked away instead of chasing, that moment when you chose peace instead of proving your point. Yeah, that moment. God saw that. Not people. Not the ones who misunderstood you. Not the ones who expected you to react. Not the ones who thought you were weak for staying quiet. God saw it. And sister, he didn't just see it. He responded to it. See, this is where a lot of people miss it, because they think miracles come from big, loud, dramatic moments. They think it's the fasting, the shouting, the public prayers. But can I tell you something real? God moves the most in the quiet. In the moments where nobody is watching, where it's just you, your thoughts, your emotions, and a decision. And you made the right one. Now I need you to understand what just happened in the spirit, because if you don't understand it, you might downplay it. You might miss the shift. That moment, that wasn't just self-control. That was obedience. And obedience triggers movement in heaven. Let me say that again so it really hits you. Your obedience triggered movement in heaven. See, a lot of people are praying for miracles, begging for breakthroughs, asking God to move, but they're ignoring the instructions. And sister, God doesn't just respond to requests. He responds to alignment. And in that moment, you aligned yourself. Even though it was uncomfortable, even though it hurt, even though everything in you wanted to do the opposite, you chose God anyway. And that's what made all the difference. Let's go deeper, because I need you to really see yourself clearly. You didn't always respond like this. Let's be honest. There was a version of you that would have reacted quick, that would have said exactly what was on your mind. No filter, no pause, no restraint. There was a version of you that would have chased, that would have tried to fix it, that would have over-explained, that would have begged for understanding. There was a version of you that would have gone back, even after being shown the truth. But this time, you didn't. This time you paused. This time you thought. This time you chose differently. And God said, now she's ready. Whew. Let that sit for a second, because that right there, that's growth. Not the kind you post about, not the kind people celebrate, but real growth, the kind that breaks cycles. And sister, you need to understand something about cycles, because this is where your power really is. Cycles are patterns, emotional patterns, relationship patterns, thinking patterns. And most people, they stay stuck in them. They react the same way. They choose the same type of people. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But you broke it. And breaking a cycle gets heaven's attention fast, because now God can trust you with something new. See, you've been asking God for different, but he needed you to move different first. You've been praying for peace, but he needed you to choose peace. You've been asking for better relationships, but he needed you to stop entertaining the wrong ones. You've been asking for elevation, but he needed to see if you could handle it. And that moment, that decision, that was your test. And sister, you passed it. That's why things are shifting now. That's why something feels different. You can't fully explain it, but you feel it. There's a calmness, a clarity, a detachment, a peace that doesn't make sense, and you're like, wait, what is this? That's the result of alignment. That's what happens when your spirit lines up with God. Now let's talk about something else, because I know this part hit you too, the loneliness. Yeah, we're going there. Because when you started moving differently, things around you started changing. People started falling off. Conversations started feeling forced. Environments started feeling heavy. And you didn't fully understand why. You started questioning yourself. Am I doing too much? Am I being distant? Why do I feel so disconnected? But sister, you weren't losing people. You were outgrowing them. And growth requires separation. You cannot become who God is calling you to be and stay connected to everything you used to be. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, it felt uncomfortable. Yeah, it felt quiet. Yeah, it felt like something was being taken from you. But what was really happening? You were being positioned. Because where God is taking you, not everybody can go. Not every mindset can survive there. Not every habit can exist there. Not every connection can follow you. So God had to create distance, not to hurt you, but to prepare you. Now let's go back to that moment again, because I want you to see it differently now. That wasn't just you doing better. That was you stepping into who you're becoming. That was you choosing your higher self. That was you saying, I'm not who I used to be anymore. And God honored that. That's why your miracle was released. Not because you were perfect, not because you got everything right, but because your heart aligned with Him. And God looks at the heart, always. That's why people can't figure you out, because they're judging you based on what they see. But God is responding to who you are. And who you are, you're chosen. Now let's talk about what that really means, because being chosen is not what people think. It's not about being better than anyone. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having it all together. Being chosen means you're called to move differently. You feel things deeper. You think deeper. You process differently. You can't just do anything and feel okay. You can't stay in certain spaces too long. You can't ignore that voice inside you. That's not you being too sensitive. That's spiritual awareness. That's God's hand on your life. That's why certain things don't sit right with you anymore. That's why you feel uncomfortable in places you used to enjoy. That's why your tolerance has changed. You're not the same, and you're not supposed to be. Sister, you're evolving. And evolution requires discomfort, but it also produces transformation. Now here's what I need you to do moving forward, and this is important. Don't go back. Don't go back to the version of you that God just delivered you from. Don't reopen doors He just closed. Don't reconnect with what you finally got peace from, because sometimes the test comes back around just to see if you're really done. And this time, you need to pass it again. Stay solid. Stay grounded. Stay aligned. Because what's coming, it's going to confirm everything. You're going to have moments where you sit back and say, wow, this is why I had to walk away. This is why I couldn't respond. This is why God told me to let it go. And when that happens, don't forget this moment. Don't forget what it took to get here. Don't forget how hard that decision was. Because your miracle, it didn't just appear. It was released the moment you chose God. Sister, you didn't miss your moment. You stepped into it. And this is only the beginning. Sister, now that we've talked about what you did, now that you understand that your obedience actually shifted something in the spirit, we need to go deeper. Because if you're chosen, there are things about your life that finally need to make sense. And I'm talking about those moments where you sat back and thought, why has my life been so hard? Let's be real. You say whatever they want, do whatever they want, treat people however they want, and it seems like nothing happens to them. But you? The moment you step out of alignment, you feel it immediately. The moment you try to ignore that inner voice, you can't even enjoy it. The moment you try to go back to something God already pulled you out of, everything starts feeling off. And you used to think, why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal? Why do I feel everything so deeply? Sister, it's because you're chosen. And when you're chosen, you're held to a different standard. Let's go to scripture for a second. In Luke 12:48, it says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Let that sink in. You've been given discernment. You've been given awareness. You've been given a connection to God that not everybody has. And because of that, more is required from you. That's why you can't move like everybody else. That's why certain doors close quickly for you. That's why certain relationships don't last. That's why things fall apart the moment they're not right. It's not rejection, it's protection. God won't allow you to stay in what He didn't assign to you, even when you want it, even when it feels good, even when it looks right on the outside. If it's not aligned, it won't last. And sister, I know that hasn't always felt good because sometimes you wanted it to work. Sometimes you prayed for it to work. Sometimes you tried to hold it together and it still fell apart. And you cried. You questioned God. You wondered what you did wrong. But looking back now, you see it differently. You realize if God didn't step in, you would have stayed. If God didn't remove it, you would have settled. If God didn't disrupt it, you would have built your life on something temporary. So yeah, it hurt, but it saved you. Now let's go even deeper, because being chosen also means you've been under spiritual attack. And I need you to hear this clearly. Not everything you went through was random. Some of it was targeted. Because the enemy doesn't waste time on people who aren't a threat. Let me say that again. The enemy does not waste time on people who aren't a threat. And you've always been a threat. Even before you understood who you were. Even before you started growing. Even before you started choosing differently. There was something on your life. That's why certain things hit you early. Confusion, rejection, emotional pain, betrayal, things that forced you to grow up faster than you should have, things that made you question yourself, things that tried to break your confidence. That wasn't random. That was resistance. Because if the enemy can confuse you, he can delay you. If he can distract you, he can mislead you. If he can make you doubt yourself, he can keep you from stepping into your purpose. But here's the part he didn't expect. You survived it. You're still here. And not only are you still here, you're growing. You're healing. You're choosing differently, which means he lost. Let's bring scripture into this. In Isaiah 54:17, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say weapons won't form. It doesn't say you won't go through things. It says they won't prosper, which means they won't succeed in destroying you. And clearly they didn't, because you're still standing. Now let's talk about your sensitivity again, because this is something you really need to understand. You feel things deeply. Energy, people, atmospheres. You can walk into a room and immediately feel when something is off. You can pick up on people's intentions without them saying a word. You can sense when something isn't right, even if it looks right. And for a long time, you thought that was a burden. But sister, that's a gift. That's discernment. And discernment is protection. In 1 Corinthians 2:14, it talks about how spiritual things are spiritually discerned. That means not everybody can see what you see. Not everybody can feel what you feel. Not everybody can recognize what you recognize, but you can. And that's why you have to trust yourself more. Stop second guessing what God already showed you. Stop ignoring red flags just because you want something to work. Stop overriding your intuition to make others comfortable. Because every time you ignore discernment, you end up in something you have to heal from. And you're past that now. You've grown too much for that. Now let's bring this back to your miracle. Because everything connects. That recent decision you made, that wasn't just about that situation. That was about trust. God needed to see, can you trust me over your feelings? Can you trust me over your emotions? Can you trust me when it doesn't make sense? And sister, you said yes. Not with your words, but with your actions. And that's what mattered. Because obedience is louder than words. Anybody can say they trust God, but not everybody can show it. You did. And because of that, something has been released over your life. Now here's where you need to be careful. Because when God releases something, the enemy tries to distract you from it. Not always by attacking you directly, but by pulling you back into old patterns, old conversations, old people, old habits, trying to see if you'll go back. Don't. This is not the season to go backward. This is the season to stand firm. In Ephesians 6:13, after you have done everything, stand. You've already done the hard part. You already made the decision. Now your job is to stand on it, even when it's quiet, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when you're tempted to go back. Stand. Because what God is building in your life right now requires stability, requires discipline, requires alignment. And you're capable of that. You've already proven it. Now let me say something that might stretch you a little. Your life was never meant to be average. That's why average never satisfied you. That's why you always felt like there was more. That's why you couldn't fully settle, even when things looked okay on the outside. Because deep down, you knew, there's something different about me. And you were right. There is. You're chosen. And being chosen means you're called to a different level, a different mindset, a different standard, a different path. Which also means you're going to have to let go of things other people hold on to. And I know that's not always easy, but it's necessary. Because where God is taking you, it's going to require everything you've been developing. Your discipline, your discernment, your peace, your boundaries, all of it. So don't question the process. Don't rush the process. Don't try to skip ahead, because everything you've been through has been preparing you for this. Chosen one. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not missing out. You're being positioned. And when it all comes together, it's going to make sense. Everything. So stay close to God. Stay grounded in your peace. Stay aligned with who you're becoming. Because what's unfolding in your life right now, it's not random. It's intentional. And your miracle, it didn't just come out of nowhere. It was released because you chose God. And sister, there's more coming. The final part requires your obedience. Sister, now that you understand what happened, now that you see how your obedience shifted things, now that you recognize why your life has been the way it's been, we need to talk about who you are becoming. Because being chosen is not just about what you've been through. It's about how you walk moving forward. And this is where everything changes. Because now you can't unknow what you know. You can't go back to thinking you're just regular. You can't go back to ignoring your discernment. You can't go back to shrinking yourself to fit into spaces God already pulled you out of. That version of you is done. And I know that can feel a little scary because growth always comes with a level of responsibility. But sister, it also comes with authority. Let's talk about that. You have more authority than you realize. Not loud, controlling, forceful authority. Spiritual authority. The kind that shifts atmospheres. The kind that brings peace into chaos. The kind that carries presence without saying a word. That's what's on your life. In Luke 10:19 it says, I have given you authority over all the power of the enemy. Do you understand what that means? You're not powerless. You're not just trying to get through life. You've been given authority. And the moment you start walking in it, things around you start responding differently. Situations that used to overwhelm you don't hit the same anymore. People who used to have access to you don't feel comfortable around you anymore. Environments that used to drain you, you start outgrowing them naturally. Why? Because your presence is changing. Your energy is shifting. Your spirit is maturing. And not everything can stay connected to that. Now let's talk about your voice, because this is important. Some of you have been quiet for too long. You've been holding back, keeping things in, not fully expressing what God has placed inside of you because you were worried about how people would receive it. But sister, your voice matters, not just for you, but for the people connected to your purpose. In Jeremiah 1:5 it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I appointed you. That means your life has always had intention. Your voice has always had purpose. And it's time for you to stop dimming it. Stop second guessing what God put in you. Stop waiting for validation from people who don't even understand your calling. Because the truth is, not everybody is supposed to understand you. Some people are assigned to benefit from you. Others will misunderstand you. And you have to be okay with that. Because when you're chosen, you're not called to be accepted by everyone. You're called to be aligned with God. Now let's talk about fear, because I can feel this part. Some of you are stepping into new territory, new mindsets, new levels of discipline, new levels of self-respect, and it feels unfamiliar. And anything unfamiliar can feel uncomfortable. But sister, unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means you're growing. In 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So that hesitation you feel, that nervousness, don't let it stop you, because on the other side of that is your next level. Now let's go even deeper, because I want to seal this in your spirit. You didn't go through everything you went through just to stay small. You didn't heal just to go back to what broke you. You didn't grow just to shrink again. Everything you've experienced, every lesson, every heartbreak, every moment of clarity, it built you stronger, wiser, more aware, more aligned. And now you're stepping into the version of you that can actually carry what God is about to release. Because let's be real, if God gave you certain blessings earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. You would have tolerated things you shouldn't tolerate. You would have ignored red flags. You would have moved out of emotion instead of wisdom. But now, you're different. You see things clearly. You move with intention. You protect your peace. And that's exactly why now is your time. Chosen one, your life is shifting, and this time it's not temporary. This is a new level. Now I want you to do something with me, and don't skip this part. I want you to receive this, not just hear it, not just listen, receive it. Say this in your spirit or out loud if you can. I am chosen. Say it again. I am chosen. Not because I'm perfect, but because God called me. I am aligned. I trust God's direction for my life. I will not go back to what He delivered me from. I will walk in peace. I will honor my growth. I will protect what God is building in me. I am ready for what's next. Let that sit. Let that settle in your spirit, because words have power. In Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. So what you speak matters. Now moving forward, I need you to be intentional about your thoughts, about your decisions, about your environment, because everything you allow either aligns with your purpose or distracts from it. And you're not in a season of distraction anymore. You're in a season of alignment, a season of clarity, a season of elevation. And it all started with that one decision, that one moment of obedience, that one choice to do it God's way. Never forget that. Because as your life continues to shift, as doors open, as things begin to fall into place, you're going to look back and realize that's when everything changed. Chosen one, your miracle wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was released the moment you chose God. And now you're walking into it. So walk boldly, walk confidently, walk in alignment, because you know who you are now and you know what God is doing in your life.